There is a sinking feeling when it comes to getting told about bad news, about what could happen or things that will affect your life. And one of them is losing employment or losing your job. And it can be a heart sinking or heart wrenching feeling where it's like, is this really happening? Am I in a dream? Can I just wake up right now? And you realize that when you're in the moment and you're living in the present, that really starts to sink in. Reality starts to sink in. There's a sense of urgency in you, or confusion, or just something where your mind starts spinning and starts thinking of all about these thoughts and so forth. And this is what a lot of people have gone through throughout the years. And in this day and age, it's not uncommon. If you work a job, the likelihood of you losing it, or you're getting told that you're no longer needed, or employment is no longer an option at the place you work at, then it can be heart wrenching, and it is a little bit scary at the same time. And that's when you are the most vulnerable, and it can be unfortunate as well. So, I want to talk about something that has happened to me personally and is having an impact on me and the people who I work with. And although it's not uncommon, I know my situation is interesting, and I also know that it's not the end all be all. So let's throw it out here. Roughly 1 in 5 workers fear job loss in the next year. Think about it. 1 in 5 workers. So that tells me that there is a good portion of the population that fears losing their job, and it just shows that they're more vulnerable than they think. And if they don't have any other sources of income, if they're not living with someone, maybe like a partner, or maybe they're married to a spouse and they're working, then the situation becomes a little bit trickier and so forth. I think that with people going through that fear of job loss, they don't want to go through the emotions, or they think that they have to control it. And that really is not the case. And I think that's what a lot of people try to think, that they can try to control it, but they really can't. And you see why that job loss or the fear of job loss is very common. Now, I want to go about something that happened to me recently that is impacting me, but there's also a silver lining to it. So, a couple weeks ago, at the end of last month, at the place I work at, the staff and I were called to an impromptu meeting with the executive director at our site, and we thought it was going to be a typical, normal, once a month meeting and so forth. But, as we got into the room together with me and my peers, and as the supervisors walked in, they were informed about what we were about to be told, and it didn't look good. So they sat down, and then the managers and our executive director came in. They also had what they call a business manager as well, who was going to sit and ask, or actually come up with a list of questions that they had, if people had any concerns. So as the meeting started, she's like, "Welcome everybody. I have Miss Sarah here who is gonna jot down any questions that you may have, and if we can't answer them today, then we will follow up on those questions." And so she went into her little speech, and then towards the end of the talk, she had let us know that come early to mid next year, that our operations will be moving out of our place. And I was a little bit confused because like, we're moving out. Like, what do you mean? And she went to elaborate, saying, so what that means is that we are shutting down our site. We are not moving to another site nearby locally, nor are we going to move elsewhere in the country. Or we're not going to be moving to another of our other 4 places as well. So, in other words, we're closing next year. We're not giving you the option to transfer, and you are on the you are about to lose your job come next year. That's basically what she should have told us in layman terms, but it looked like a very difficult conversation, or it's something that she had a hard time explaining, which is for good reasons. And so when we took in the news, well, here's what happened. The entire group, I think, was really shocked and surprised about it. And they did ask questions and so forth, and kind of really looking forward ahead in the coming weeks and months. And that's what basically the rest of the meeting was about. It was Q&A and so forth, and just kind of getting a better understanding what to expect ahead and if there's going to be a timeline. And at the moment, there is really no clear timeline. All that we know is that it's probably going to happen in the next 6 to 10 months. Most likely, middle of next year is when our site will be closing and our operations will no longer cease to exist. So besides the Q&A, that day in particular, I think people were shocked and they just couldn't believe it. And people were upset and they were talking among each other and just trying to take it all in and so forth. And I think there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of uncertainty, especially the level of uncertainty has extremely risen among my peers because they're confused, they're not sure what to do. And it was definitely a surprise, but it really shouldn't have been a surprise. And it really shows that I think people are more vulnerable than they think. And I saw it in real time, the reactions from my peers and what they were going through. And it just tells me that people, not only they're not financially prepared, but they're not emotionally prepared as well to go through what could be challenging times in the coming months and a high level of uncertainty. What's going to lie ahead next. But I want to go back to my earlier point about these, when people decide to go through, the situation, or what could be happening is they fear going through job loss and they go through a bit of a surprise phase, or they're trying to go through the motions and thinking what they're going to do. And it really falls back on this idea that people are just not, do not fully understand or are not really ready to go through those difficult situations, or they never would think that their job could be taken away from them. But you know that's the true reality. And the truth is that no job is safe. No job is ever safe if you work for someone else. If you work for an employer, then you're putting your life on the line, your financial situation and all that. And sure, you could be getting income from your employer, and that helps you stay afloat and helps you keep a roof under your head. But you, it may be guaranteed, but there really is no guarantee of you staying there permanently. And this is what I have really learned over time, is that nothing is ever permanent. And interestingly enough, I was just thinking about these situations in the weeks prior to this tough day that happened. And I told myself that nothing's ever permanent. Things can happen in the snap of the fingers, and all of a sudden you're faced with a harsh reality and you're trying to think, what are you going to do? And so forth. And it really is something to think about a lot, because most people live their lives thinking that things will last forever, or maybe their jobs are guaranteed, when really it's not. When you have that moment of reality and you realize that you're not safe and so forth, or that your job is not guaranteed, or there are no guarantees in life, then that can be a rough moment. And what I saw last week was, not only I saw people's vulnerability uh, be shown, because I saw that there is weakness, and I saw there was a loss of hope, but also people are just not really, they're not prepared to go through those challenges. They think that there should be guarantees in life when there really isn't, and so forth. Just taking a look at my notes, but seeing those people, how they reacted last week, is just more confirmation that in our society today, especially in America, people are more vulnerable than ever, and people are just one financial emergency away from you know chaos, or their life is set back in a way. And what I saw last week was a moment where people were just fearful and they're vulnerable, and it's just what I've been confirming and been following for years, that a lot of people are in trouble, personally, mentally, financially. It really is a very interesting time that we're living in. So this news breaking out last week, it was a surprise to some people, and so forth. But this is how life works sometimes, and it's not uncommon for employers to do layoffs and they have to do some restructuring so that way they can save money. And the main reason that we're closing down is that the work volume has not been heavy as they had anticipated. We have more staff on sites, and the balance is not there. You have more bodies, but you don't have the work to fulfill them, or there's not enough work for everyone to do. And sure, they can do target layoffs or they can cut down on staff, but when they were looking at the planning and they looked at the 1 year horizon, they came to the conclusion that there really isn't going to be that balance is not there between work volume and staff counts. And so that was most likely the right decision to make. And although it is a difficult decision because my peers are impacted and it will, it's like their life turned upside down last week. This is a reality of how business is in today's world. Businesses have to restructure, they have to cut back, they have to look at ways to save money because right now our operations is bleeding money. And it, when you're in a financial loophole like that, you got to look at ways to save money. And one of the most effective ways, as much as people don't like to hear, is that you let go a lot of people and so forth. So I fully agree on that perspective when it comes to a business standpoint. And you have to, if you're ever in a position where you run a business or you have to make difficult decisions where you are managing a budget and looking at operation costs, you have to put all options on the table. And in this case, they made the difficult decision to let go everyone, including myself, and just shut down our site come next year. Now, I've talked about how my peers have generally reacted, and I have observed how vulnerable they are and how uncertain they are as well. So you may be asking, okay, Eric, so that's all fine and dandy. How are you reacting to it? Well, here's how I'm handling it. When I heard of the news last week, honestly, I had no anxiety. I was super chill about it. I was super calm and I was not in reactive mode. Now, I'm not surprised because this was something that I had always assumed or think that for the last year and a half or 2 years that this could happen. And I knew for a very long time that we could come to a situation like this. And I've always been in this preparedness mindset that you have to be ready for anything. And I think that with my years of preparing, whether that's financially or mentally, financially, I'm doing great. I have emergency savings funds for up to 1 year. In other words, if I got let go tomorrow, I could live off my emergency savings for at least a year, which is amazing because most people do not have a lot of savings. I mean, not let alone they don't have a year of savings. They don't even have 3 to 6 months of savings, which is the ideal recommendation. Although I think 12 months, a year or more, I think that is sufficient enough to give you the time to get through a challenging situation. And I saw not too long ago that more than half of Americans right now have less than $500 in emergency savings, or they don't have $400. They have $400 or less. Think about that. If you don't have $500 or more in a financial emergency that could happen anytime, today, tomorrow, next week, next month, those individuals are putting themselves in a much difficult financial situation. Now, this video is not about how to build up an emergency fund. I have done a video or two on that in the past. So if you'd like to go through my channel, you can look that one up and so forth. But I'm very narrow focused on what type of savings or how much savings you should have in an emergency fund, whether that's 3 to 6 months or 1 year, and really diversify your funds. So I'll just leave it like that. But going back to my response to the situation, I was not in panic mode. And when I learned about it, yeah, it sucks. It's unfortunate. It would have been great to if the site had stayed open for 5 more years or so, because right now my situation, I'm looking at real financial freedom in less than 4 years. And had things turned out for the better, then staying here for a couple more years and giving myself that time would have been great. But, you know, in situations like this, it's not doing me any favor, or time is really not working in my favor. Well, it is right now because they basically gave us an advance notice of these layoffs because the site will not be closing for at least another 6 to 10 months. So right now, my peers and I, and everyone who works at that site, time is to our advantage. We got plenty of time to figure things out and you know start living in the new reality that's setting in. And for each one of us, get ready to move on to the next chapter in our lives. But I'm not too worried. I really am not. Now, when I got out of that meeting, I did walk around and had to process my thoughts and start thinking what I was going to do. But I told everyone that day that I was feeling pretty chill about it, and that uh, what I told them and what I did the next day is that I wrote out a plan of what I want to do in the coming weeks and months. And when I jotted those down and got everything together, I wrote a little action plan, and I'm going to stick to it. Right now, I got a short term plan for the next month, and then I also have mid case or like worst case scenarios if this does go longer. But me having to plan this out has really been very beneficial, and it doesn't create that anxiety in me, or it's not creating a lot of stress. Now, yes, am I looking for employment right now? You bet. As of the time of this recording, I've had a couple interviews already. Have not heard back from them, but I'm actively looking and I am moving quick, because the best thing I can do right now is probably find something sooner than later. and then just move on. So that way I can get back to kind of doing more, long-term planning for the rest of this year, and then also as we move into the next year, 2027. So I'm definitely taking action right now, and I'm moving quickly. And this is something that my peers and I have to do, and this is the new reality. But I'm feeling pretty good about it, and hey, I'm doing this right now. I got to say that I'm grateful to be, speaking uh, in front of the camera, and just talking these things out loud, because the announcement that I got that I'm going to be losing my job next year, that's not going to stop me from doing what I love doing. It's not going to stop me from pursuing my passions. I'm going to continue doing videos like this, and I'm going to continue to write. I'm going to continue to trade every week, continue on wealth building because that's going very well. Overall, this is not the end all be all, but it's only the beginning of something bigger and better to come. And this leads me to the main takeaway of this video. Fear and surprise, they are real things, but it's not the end. All hope is not lost. And like I mentioned earlier, there is a silver lining that leads to something better within the next year. So, if you've been in a situation like this, or you're in a situation where you just lost your job, or you're unemployed and you're feeling hopeless, understand that it's not the end, but only it's just going to open up the path to better opportunities ahead. You got to have a look forward direction, and you got to look at the bigger picture because you never know what could be coming your way in the next 6 to 12 months. For all I can say, I like to have that optimistic overview that you will be better off in a year. Unfortunately, most people today, and I will say that long term thinking in the next decade, I think more people are going to be worse off, and it's not going to be good for humanity. Humanity will be far much worse off 10 years from now, and that's a cold hard truth right there. But that's not something that I control. So, in situations like this, you have to take ownership, and you have to put whatever you can control under your hands, and you gotta take charge of your own life. Because at the end of the day, if you're working for an employer or if you're a freelancer, understand that there's no guarantees. You could lose employment at any time, and it could set you back. But it also can be an opportunity for improvement to make yourself much better than you are right now. Myself, 6 to 12 months, I want to be in a much better situation personally, mentally, and financially. And I feel that for the most part, now, although it's not guaranteed, I could be worse off a year from now. But based on my planning and the mindset that I have, I know that I feel good about being in a much better situation 1 year from now. And when we look back 1 year from now, when everyone moves on, the site's closed, we just move on with our lives. So don't think that you lost everything. Not all hope is lost. Think of it as an opportunity to find something better and to enrich yourself further. So, but I will provide an update in future videos of how this is going. But for someone like myself, I'm not too worried about it. I'm starting to look right now. Taking it one day at a time and just going about it. So, but that's what I got for today's video. Uh, if you enjoyed this video, if you have any comments or questions, or you have been or are in a similar situation, I'd love to read your comments and we can start a little dialogue. So feel free to hit me up in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video or you like the previous videos I've done, consider supporting my channel. Hey, no pressures. You don't have to, but if you got value out of it, then any support is greatly appreciated. All right, until next time, peace.